Welcome, you are now tuning into the Cookie Blast Podcast, the podcast that talks about all things fighting games. I'm your host, Subway Cookie, and this is episode 7. In this episode, we'll be talking about 50-50s in fighting games and going over things to consider when defending against 50-50s.
Hey! Do you like candy?
So first up, we've got a few announcements. This weekend, we've got the Show Your Prowess 2 tournament on this Sunday on the 21st of July. And this is a 1v1 tournament for Tekken 7 and Street Fighter 5. This is the first Tekken World Tour Dojo tournament for Western Australia, so the more that enter, the more points we're able to get for the TWT, so make sure to register as soon as possible. Registrations start at 12 p.m. and end at 12:50 p.m., with the tournament starting at 1 p.m. The venue is at Escape Portal in Cannington, and the address and more details can be found in the link in the description below. Today, I also wanted to shout out the GameOn Gaming Center in Virginia Beach, in Virginia. GameOn Gaming Center and the Gamer Bus offers 2 ways to get your game on at the main center, which looks dope AF, and a bus for, you guessed it, gaming. They can accommodate for parties, tournaments, birthdays, after-school clubs, summer camps, you name it. They also have FGC Casuals on Thursdays, so head on down to level up your game. Just give the GameOn crew a buzz and they can help you out with whatever your needs are. More details can be found in the description below. If you're down in the VA, make sure to drop on by to the GameOn Game Center and get your game on. Also, if you'd like tournaments to be announced on this podcast or any FGC events at all in your area, feel free to let me know via Twitter or through the comments at the bottom and I'll make sure to announce it. These podcasts will be a weekly thing, so please let me know a few weeks prior to the event so I can mention it ASAP.
Boostin'!
Anyways, thank you guys so much for tuning in to this week's episode of the Cookie Blast Podcast. And as I said earlier, we'll be talking about 50-50s today, but to start off, I just hope that you guys don't mind my voice. I'm actually recovering from the flu, and my throat hurts like crazy, but I really wanted to get this out. Because it's been in my mind for a long time, and I wanted to explain this for a while now, actually. So, anyways, on to the main topic. So, basically, we're going to be talking about defending against 50-50s. So, first of all, for those relatively new to fighting games or are unfamiliar with the term, 50-50s are basically situations where you have to guess if the opponent is going to hit you high or hit you low, and in some cases, either throw you. It may seem quite daunting, especially because, as the name suggests, there's a 50-50 chance for each option to come out. But today I wanted to tell you and to let you know that though they are called 50-50s, each option is not equal. And this is important to think of when on defense, and even to read your opponent's offense. So, to get started, when defending against an opponent that puts you in 50-50 situations, there are 3 things to consider when on defense. And those 3 things are frames, options, and risk and reward. Okay, to explain this further, I'll be using the basic 50-50 mix that Sub-Zero utilizes in MK11 with his Dead of Winter variation. I'll try and keep this as simple as possible because though I'm using MK11 as an example, you can break down any 50-50 situation using this strategy. Also, as a side note, I'll be using the basic notation used in MK to explain things. So 1 is left punch, 2 is right punch, 3 is left kick, 4 is right kick. And for other notations, just refer to the description at the bottom as well. So, in Sub-Zero's mix is basically comes off from his back 1-3 on hit. Okay, so on hit. So when you get hit by a back 1-3, more often than not, the opposing Sub-Zero will initiate a 50-50 or a mix-up situation. Back 1-3 will leave Sub-Zero at plus 10 frames. So for those that aren't familiar with frame data, look, I'll try and make a video explaining frame data and its use in the future podcast, but for now, basically it means that Sub-Zero can act faster than you. Here, he can do one of 3 things. He can either go for a low, an overhead, or a throw. forcing you to either block low, block high, or take a grab. If you look at it from face value, it seems that each option is equal, but I'm here to tell you that they are not. First, let's take a look at the frame data. So far, we know that on hit, our opponent is plus 10 frames advantage. The low option, which is usually back 3-2 into Ice Ball, has a 13 frame startup and costs no bar. With the plus 10 advantage, this basically means that this move comes out in 3 frames. If we look through our move list, no move that we have can come out faster than 3 frames, so this option is pretty much guaranteed unless our opponent stuffs up their timing. And it's guaranteed if it hits. Okay, I say if it hits because though you can't hit them, you can always block low, right? So now the opponent is forcing you to block low. He also has the option to go for an overhead. Sub-Zero's overhead option is 4-2 into Amplified Ice Ball, which has a 19 frame startup. Now we take the 10 frame advantage into the situation, which means that this move comes out at 9 frames. The fastest move in the game is the crouching jab, which is 7 frames. So if you're really good, you can stop it with an 8 frame normal jab into a combo punish, which seems really hard, but with practice you can probably do it. But I mean, you have to be a god to do it. However, for explanation's sake, we'll use the crouching jab in this example because it's the easier one of the two. There's also the option to block high, which allows you something more guaranteed, because forward 2 is -6 on block, which essentially means that your opponent loses their turn. So anything you do will be much faster than them. Or if they made the mistake of trying to finish the string, forward 2-4 is -19 on block, allowing you to punish them with a full combo. Or if they cancel into Amplified Ice Ball, it is still -15 on block, which is also full combo punishable. Not only is this option punishable, but it costs the opponent 1 bar of meter. So just to recap, so the overhead, so forward 2 overhead is the slower option. It costs meter, and if the string is finished, it's punishable. And at best, the opponent is losing their turn. Or at worst, the opponent is losing their turn. Right? Or at best, sorry. If you block, at best, they're losing their turn. Right? So this means, as we're talking about this, it means that the opponent is not only investing 1 bar of meter to perform this, but is also putting their life bar on the line. Because if they amplify into Ice Ball, which most likely they will take a good chunk of damage. So you see why both options are not equal, right? So what is the best course of action on defense? Well, the best course of action would be to block low and occasionally take the overhead if you miss. And then don't take the overhead. What I mean is, but you don't worry about taking the overhead, because when you take the overhead, you condition your opponent to see that the overhead works, and then suddenly, when you decide to block high, they're dead. Pretty much, they're dead, and essentially you're telling your opponent that the only way that they are going to get a mix is by putting their life bar on the line. Once you block that once, right? Once you take the overhead a few times and then block it once, I guarantee you your opponent, you're going to start to see your opponent use the low option, which you will be blocking because you're not going to let your opponent use the safe, meterless option. Okay? So essentially, don't get overwhelmed when you get hit by the overhead. That's fine. That's fine. Also, with practice as well, you can block low, and then when you see the overhead coming out, just block high. When it takes some practice, but offline, it's definitely doable. definitely doable, which makes this much more dangerous for the Sub-Zero player. So that's two options that we've covered so far. And you're probably thinking Sub-Zero player also has one more option, and that is to throw you. Okay, so let's take a look at his throws. His forward throw leaves you really close to him, allowing him to start the mix again with either an overhead, low, or bait out and get up options. This is the best option for him because it puts you back in the mix. The neutral throw or back throw, if not in the corner, resets neutral. Okay, if you're not in the corner, if they're not throwing you into the corner, this resets neutral. So unless your opponent is extremely confident in their neutral against your character, then this option will come out a lot less. So once again, this isn't an exact 50-50, because by neutral throwing, Sub-Zero has to start again with the neutral and try to get close to you. So if Sub-Zero goes for a throw, more or less, just mash out too. If they go for a neutral throw, it's perfectly fine for you because it puts you far away from the Sub-Zero player, and you can just keep them out, just zone them out. So now you see that there are various risk rewards when it comes to different options in the mix-up. The very last thing to do is to apply that logic to your opponent. Okay, so all of these things, though it's logical to go for the low option more, or it's logical maybe to go for the overhead option, and for them, see what their habits are. Okay, so if your opponent is going for the overhead option a lot first, then they don't mind, right? They're not scared, so make them scared. If they're going for the safe option first, they're already scared. They're already trying to keep it safe. So just you know what to do. Make them take risks. Force them to take risks so that they have to do the overhead, and then bam, block the overhead. All right. Apply this knowledge into your game plan on defense, right? So you don't have to passively just take the mix. Actively take the mix. Actively look for options to make your opponent not have an easy time mixing you. Okay. Now I realized that I said earlier in this episode that it can be applied to other fighting games. It may not be exactly the same, all right, but the principle stays the same. Take a look at the frame data, the options, and the risk reward. What is your opponent's unsafe option in the mix-up? If they're both reasonably safe, which is the one that puts the opponent at a slight disadvantage as opposed to the other options, like the throw, right? Which one's better? Which one's a better option? And then apply that to what your opponent is doing. Break down the mix. And as soon as you do that, 50-50s won't be such an overwhelming guessing game, right? And I encourage you to do that when you're in playing, or even when you're watching tournament footage or gameplay footage. Watch what the opponent is doing, right? Learn the options, and then try and guess. Make that a guessing game for you, right? And see how many times you guess right. And if you're guessing right quite a lot, it means you're getting good. You know, you can tell what the opponent is trying to do. You're getting into the mind of the opponent. If you're not, that's fine. That's what replays are there for. That's what's all there for. It's just there to practice. The more you practice it, the more you break it down, it'll be so much easier. And 50-50s won't be such a big deal for you going forward. So I hope this helps you out in some way. So personally, as a Sub-Zero Dead of Winter player, this sorta kills me, but it's no big deal. It's no big deal for me because you're still gonna get schmixed. I'm telling you right now, you're still gonna get mixed. Though this is the end of today's episode, I want to invite you guys to let me know what topics you would like covered in future episodes of the Cookie Blast podcast. There are a lot of things to learn and talk about when it comes to fighting games, and I, for one, really enjoy making these episodes. I mean, look, I'm doing an episode even though I'm about to lose my voice. All the research, all the preparation, and learning new things myself I love it. I love it so much. So feel free to let me know in the comment section what you guys want to discuss about, and we will be able to talk. We'll talk about them a lot more. Make sure to hit that like button if this episode helps you out, and hit the subscribe button for more awesome content like this. This has been your boy Subway Cookie with a code.